What we're about to embark on isn't an experience that requires us to pay attention to the here and now or the sounds around us. Rather, it centers on the empty space and the stillness that exists between, the spaces that conceal hidden significance. In the emptiness, the silence, is where genuine consciousness starts. The more we focus on what is absent, the more we come to understand the profound presence that is all around us, even when it isn't directly evident. This idea provides a way to be more present and understood in all of our experiences, not only in music. Similarly, as we stroll through nature, this principle is applicable. Even as we take in the aesthetic value of the shapes and forms around us, we are also cognizant of something more fundamental and universal. Underneath the beauty we perceive, as a field or wholeness, lies this awareness. It is not separate from it. Naturally, words fall short of completely describing this experience. They merely serve as markers, leading to the indescribable. One way to tap into this more profound awareness is to simply say, "Listen to the silence." However, technically speaking, there is no such thing as silence. There just isn't anything to listen to. Actually, what we're referring to is a level of focus, not stress. By shifting our attention away from the sounds themselves and onto their non-existence, we can better perceive the space between them or the field that exists independently of any audible sound. This stillness serves as a kind of backdrop for the artistic expression of sound and all other senses. The surface of a painting, rather than the canvas beneath it, is what catches our eye when we view it. It is nonetheless conceivable to direct our focus to that subfield. Stepping into nature is like entering a field of stillness. No matter how loud the world around us gets, there's a complete absence of sound. Sound sensitivity, analogous to vibration resolution, is a complex ability for our senses to register. Sound sensitivity is a complete absence of sound. Register genesis. This quiet, yet tertiary, is not dead. The silence that envelops us is not that of a soundproof room, but rather of life and activity. All other details seem to fit into this bigger picture of background quiet. Because thought is inherently linked to form and substance, becoming aware of it causes a natural shift in attention and the subsidence of thought. Mental noise is what thoughts are. Before continuing, I believe you're here for a reason. You're willing to grow as a person, to develop yourself to become more present and conscious. For that reason, I recommend you to subscribe to our channel, as growth comes with continuity. Our channel provides many videos to help you with this path to enlightenment. Most of the time, our minds and senses are the primary means of self-identification. You can't think and be aware of the stillness at the same time once you tune into this deeper awareness. This state of mind, unencumbered by ideas, opens the door to being. This concentration is not centered on thinking, but on being attentive, as if you were listening to nothing but quiet. Before thinking, what is that state of awareness? It is a state of mind that exists independently of all forms, both before and after thinking. Absolutely stunning, serene, and fully attuned, this is mindless awareness. The very act of listening to these words may make you aware of the chasm that exists between them. At a retreat, I heard someone say, "I'm starting to enjoy the moments when you don't speak, almost more than when you do. That's when I know the practice is paying off. I'm no longer needed." Now, in a world filled with machinery and equipment that produce background noise, projectors, fans, etc., total stillness is practically impossible to attain. In spite of this, we might continue to focus on the spaces between words. The spaces between words include what? It is the tranquility within. A calmness settles over the listener as they become cognizant of the void, the space between their words. Creating the space to focus the present, something complex to begin with, can also become complex. Minds that are functioning normally are in this condition of mindless presence or awareness. Presence, since being in this state is giving your undivided attention to the here and now. Our thoughts are inherently bound up with the past or the future. Our thoughts are influenced by our past experiences and our expectations for the future. Even when we consider current events, we rarely let our minds completely immerse themselves in the here and now, preferring instead to think on things that have happened in the past or what might happen in the future. Ability to create and manifest spaciousness is one of the greatest gifts available to each of us, and something we are consistently repeating to ourselves. The completeness of existence in the here and now is this aliveness, which is both full and empty simultaneously. Sometimes, thinking about a better time, a future when me will feel whole, is all that's on the mind. It's never satisfied. It's always pushing itself to go further, stays focused, and becomes empowered by a faith. Certainly, this state cannot exist aimlessly, and we're always centered around one center of higher awareness, the center of the self. Try to stay in that space of unadulterated awareness while I stay silent. An overwhelming feeling of vitality may wash over you. What this implies is that your attention is inhabiting your body. You feel more present since your focus isn't only on the outside world, it's also on the inside. In fact, you are that pervasive presence. Test how easily you can keep this awareness. One aspect of your body, like your hands, may stand out more clearly as you stay in this position. Although the feeling is modest at first, it will grow stronger as you continue to practice. Close your eyes and grasp your right or left hand. Then, without seeing or moving it, ask yourself, can I tell if my right hand is still there? This is an exercise I commonly suggest to those who have trouble perceiving vision. This may be an extremely basic inquiry, but it gets the job done. Pay close attention to your hand as you concentrate on the subject. You'll sense its vitality. Your focus is now approaching the physical realm. When you've experienced this vitality, it can act as a stabilizing force, allowing you to remain in the here and now, rather than getting carried away by your thoughts. Thoughts have a way of engulfing you, but this practice will help you see the unmanifested dimension underlying the form. Sitting here right now, you might start to experience a broad sense of vitality all over your body. The subtle, ever-present vitality that permeates your entire body is comparable to the sensation of touch in your hand. Our use of the pronoun you to describe the person experiencing these emotions makes the concept of presence sound like an outside observer. You come to understand, though, that this is really a linguistic constraint. The reality is that being fully present is an embodied experience, not something apart from you. Your whole body is affected by this phenomenon. You merge with that emotion when you let yourself be carried away by it. It's not something you see, it's a part of you. Intelligence resides in the body. There is intelligence within every cell, an intellect that surpasses that of the human brain. Circulation of blood, digestion, organ balance, and cell replication are all activities over which the mind has no control. A lot is going on below the level of our awareness that we can influence. The fastest computers on the planet would crash and burn if asked to control just one part of the human body. Still, the human body is a wonder of physical intellect, Meenash said. But this body is not permanent. Its appearance and subsequent dissolution are both reminiscent of the transient nature of smoke or a soap bubble. When we take the bigger picture of time into account, the fact that our physical existence is transitory is sobering. People in a city in the 1920s, for example, seem to be always going about their business, and yet they have all passed away. In their place, new generations are navigating the same streets, and their lives are just as transient. Success, health, and riches, which appear to be paramount at the present, are, in fact, relative rather than absolute factors in life. Being healthy and wealthy are important, but they take a back seat to being who you really are. Knowing your identity beyond this fleeting shape, the unique identity you hold on to, is more important than any of these marks. Magnetism Buddhism. Martha and Mary, two characters in the Bible, embody this concept. While Martha was worried and preoccupied with what felt like pressing matters, Mary opted to just listen. Though many things appeared significant, Jesus said that just one mattered, and Mary had already chosen it. Being in a condition of mindless awareness was more important than completing duties. To listen attentively in this sense is to let go of one's own thoughts and focus solely on what one is hearing. Therapists who are good at what they do also know this. Something beyond learnt tactics takes over as their knowledge and experience increase. A higher intellect starts to steer the conversation when they listen attentively. When clients are able to relax and let their guard down, therapists find themselves in a position where insight can come easily, even when words fail. We are here to activate that greater intelligence that resides within us. Being more alert to it will reveal that it can direct your life, even though it appears inert at first. Just observing the gaps, the spaces between ideas or noises. No longer do you operate merely mentally. You start to live from a position of completeness. Although the physical form has a finite lifespan, it reflects a more fundamental and everlasting reality. This is only a transitory expression of the universal awareness. Reconnecting with this greater everlasting essence is what it means to develop bodily attunement. It's a circle back, a change from wondering about the world and all the thoughts in it, to knowing yourself inside and out. Rediscovering a basic feeling of presence, a non-judgmental awareness that is not bound to your particular narrative, is the goal of this inner journey, not reverting to a conditioned self. This way of being is unaffected by the ups and downs of life. In many ways, returning to this understanding is at the heart of the journey. You can feel like things aren't going according to plan while this is happening. Very few people can say that everything in their lives has gone exactly as planned. The whole road, with all its ups and downs, has brought you to this point of realization, even though there have been some missteps along the way. As frustrating as it may be when things don't work according to your expectations, remember that everything happens for a reason, to help you become more authentic, to feel better in yourself, secure and safe. An elegant illustration of this concept is a lady who, even after achieving great success and having a meaningful career as a teacher, is profoundly sad since her life has failed to live up to her aspirations from when she was younger. Despite the positive influence she has on kids, her mind continues to dwell on her childhood dream of being an actor. Because of this, you might start to feel that life is not going the way you expected it to. Discomfort arises from the disconnection between one's ideal existence and the here and now. Like this woman, many people constantly compare themselves to their ideal selves. Their narrative regarding the trajectory of their lives is heavily influenced by early aspirations and societal norms. Dissatisfaction and annoyance ensue when the external world does not conform to this internal story. For example, the woman anticipated landing a commercial role as a stepping stone to her acting career goal. However, the moment she heard no, she felt as if her world had collapsed, as if her aspirations for a new future had been dashed. She is not alone in her pattern of letdowns. Everyone has expectations about how things should work out, but reality often gets in the way of those plans. Even when we achieve our goals, whether they be material prosperity, public acclaim, or a specific way of life, we frequently find that it isn't enough to truly satisfied by any circumstance, no matter how perfect it is. In truth, the world's status quo is often too much to expect. We feel unsatisfied, no matter how perfect it is. There is always an underlying polarity, a contrast, that serves as a reminder that external conditions cannot bring us fulfillment. End quote. The concept of polarity is fundamental to comprehending the reasons for our frequent dissatisfaction, even when confronted with circumstances that ought to elicit delight. As long as we keep looking for external sources to satisfy us, the Buddha says, we will always be unhappy. We can never be satisfied if we let other people, relationships, or circumstances define who we are or fill us up. The happiness we seek in this world is never long-lasting. In fact, it is this transient quality of happiness that frequently makes us crave for something else. As an example, think about celebrity. The pursuit of fame is a common aspiration for many who believe it will provide them with the happiness they crave. The loss of privacy, the incessant need for attention, and the uncertainty of whether others care about you as a person or simply your popularity are some of the difficulties that come with fame. You can find that the item you were hoping would make you happy ends up making you sad instead. People who seek popularity frequently have to deal with the consequences of their desire when their expectations don't match up with what they experience. Semi-famously, in relationships too, our ideal mate, in theory, doesn't necessarily work out that way. All too often, the ideal partner, the one we envision as the missing piece to our puzzle, falls short of our wildest dreams. Nothing in this world, no matter how good a person is or how much we do, can ever truly satisfy us in the long run. No matter how idealized something is, it still has two sides, opposites that show us that we can't find true happiness looking outside of ourselves. Knowing that nothing outside of oneself can give true happiness is the first step in making sense of this. Always expecting the world to provide us with the things we need to feel whole is a surefire recipe for unhappiness. Happiness doesn't come from outside sources. We must look within to get it. The world can't give us what we seek. No matter how much we try, the world will never be able to satisfy our deepest desires, so long as we keep looking for approval from outside sources. In all our time, it is simpler to let go of expectations when we realize that nothing outside of ourselves can fulfill us in the long run. You can find fulfillment in life regardless of how things unfold. We can start to accept the world the way it is rather than trying to change it. This necessitates recognizing that the good and bad, the successful and unsuccessful, are all components of life's inherent rhythm. Through this approach, we can embrace the flaws, realizing that they are essential components of the journey. Living in the now becomes possible when we cease seeking satisfaction from outside sources. Things, locations, and people are no longer necessary for our sense of completeness. Alternatively, we might be content with the present moment by accepting things as they are. The burden of disappointment that comes from life falling short of our expectations fades away when the urge to find ourselves in the world around us fades away as well. As soon as we let go of the expectation that the world will complete us, this very instant is sufficient, and the world becomes an immensely more pleasant place to be. Scott Becker. Realizing that true happiness comes from inside, rather than from outside, is a freeing understanding. It liberates us from the shackles of seeking gratification through material possessions or subjective sensations. We can choose to accept life as it is, polarity and all, rather than mold it to fit our ideal selves or our preconceived notions of what ought to transpire. Doing so allows us to be fully present and at peace with ourselves. With this realization in hand, we may stop striving for an idealized version of our lives and start living authentically in the present moment. Raising our vibration, we tune ourselves to a higher frequency. Knowing this, you realize that no matter what happens, wishing for a better future won't get you anywhere. What now? Where do I go from here? You may ask all at once as you start to doubt everything and wonder if it's even worth it. Does it really matter to do anything if it doesn't appear to have any impact? Then, seemingly out of nowhere, the present now, this very now, is rediscovery. Up until this point, the present was merely considered as a vehicle for getting from one place to another. In retrospect, you'll see that the need to accomplish something meaningful, to finish your story, and to establish your identity was the driving force behind most of your actions. The here and now, however, is no longer relevant for that reason. The present moment becomes clear to you. It has broken free from all associations with the past, present, or future. You find liberation in the knowledge that the current moment is sufficient on its own. A leaf's motion in the wind, for example, takes on an otherworldly quality. Don't lose sight of the one important aspect of life that is immediately in front of you, because you have a tendency of always looking elsewhere. I am being reawakened. Now is the moment you come to. Looking at things through a mental lens, the here and now might not appear ideal or desired. The subconscious may think, here I am in a dull job, stuck behind a desk. Every day feels the same, as well as, I'm living in a place I don't want to be, with limited resources, as well as, my health is failing, as well as, I'm unhappy with my relationships. It's possible to feel trapped, but what gives you the impression that things will improve in the future, even if you do decide to leave? The world as it currently stands might not seem like a welcoming environment, but in being fully present, you connect with a power that transcends your life's forms and circumstances. It is at times of great adversity that many people come to this realization. Despite everything they're going through, they feel more alive and powerful than before. Even if the outside world remains the same, their internal world undergoes dramatic transformation. They undergo this change when they decide to stay in the here and now, no matter how terrible it becomes. When we're uncomfortable, it's human nature to want to run away or hide in our imagination. But misery is yours for the making when you fight the present. So, with this awareness, people stop fighting the present moment. They cease dreaming of a better future and give up on the idea that things would get better for them soon. Freedom, not from outside forces but from mental conditioning, comes when aversion to the present moment diminishes. Living, breathing tranquility is what you get when you give up control. Additionally, it is not about making external changes to your situation. It's all about embracing reality. Here we have genuine submission. There is an instant change when you give up control and stop telling yourself no to life. However, I should have done this sooner. You come to the realization that a lot of your previous endeavors were pointless. You have always looked outside of yourself for happiness, believing that material success or other people's approval would finally satisfy you. Peace, though, was always within grasp. The moment's resistance had merely served to obscure it. The focus here isn't only on how things appear on the outside. This rule is applicable in cases of extreme sadness or sickness as well. A change might take place when you bring your whole being into the here and now. When people are sick, healing can happen if it's possible. Giving in to whatever is has helped countless people become well. But this giving up isn't giving up. Giving up and accepting one's illness are not the same thing. Taking on the persona of a sick person is not the point. Some people may even hide behind this persona because they feel validated by it. even if they may not have felt that way when they were better. This is an alternative kind of resistance, in which the ego insists on the sickness as a means of self-consultation. While this isn't the case for every condition, it is possible in some. A typical example of a false awareness is the one of the person living dizzy half the time and not seeing everything. All right, I'm sick. There's nothing I can do. That's not surrender. That's this kind of resignation. Rather than resigning yourself to some abstract idea, give up to the present moment. In this very second, you give in to whatever it is that is happening. Sure, I am. Additionally, specific emotions could surface. Some people may have impairments. Somewhere in the body, you might feel some kind of pain. They have informed you that you are really sick. Although you may not be able to feel it yet, the handicap, however, remains. I am unable to walk correctly at the present, regardless of the impairment. Okay, it's not going to change. You might as well accept that. Is not projecting into the future. That is projection. The very being of the present moment. I think so. At any given time, you can proceed from that point onward. On rare occasions, I've had the opportunity to stare into the eyes of folks who have lived with severe disability for many years. In a few of them, I saw a glimpse of extreme misery and the terrible stress of living that way. Dissatisfied with one's own identity, how reasonable that you should be wallowing in self-pity when everyone else around you appears perfectly healthy and mobile, despite your inability to move about unaided. I totally get why you end up with a miserable self. Then I've seen a few. When I gazed into their eyes, I saw a gleaming light, the lack of an unhappy being. There was no longer any complainer inside. There was no creature that asked, "Why me?" and only looked. Their sense of self had developed in relation to their disease or impairment. After the undesirable was accepted, a change occurred. It was a surrender. This is a fascinating story. I saw this man. Transformation occurred while I was a graduate student, and that was the end of my graduate studies. The PhD then was a complete bust. However, there was this man whose restaurant I frequented during my lunch breaks at university. A man in this wheelchair would be wheeled inside the graduate center. Multiple individuals were constantly encircling him, including my own mother, over and over, almost a year. He could not sleep. My son reminded him to come back to the dining room for a moment. The conversation continued. The PhD then was a complete bust. However, this man whose wheelchair would be wheeled inside the graduate center, multiple individuals were constantly encircling him in order to break his trance and focus on me. Issued warnings because he was paralyzed, someone else would have to get his food, someone else would have to feed him, and someone else still would have to prop up his head. Then someone else had to put the meal in his mouth, while another person held a handkerchief under his chin. "Who is this?" I questioned upon my arrival. They informed me he is a teacher at this school who is afflicted with an incurable disease. These graduate students are the ones who have been given 2 years to live by him. He was limited to making croaking noises, yet there was always at least one person who could decipher his meaning. Upon a day, I was the one to open the door for him when he came downstairs into the building. Here he sits with heavy closed eyes, handling his work, sitting in his office, smoking his cigars, and spitting out his poop. As he rolled up in his wheelchair, he cast an eye on me. When I looked at him, I couldn't believe he wasn't unhappy. For a brief moment, there was no dissatisfied me. There was only staring. The unexpected transpired. He gave in. After that, I departed from the institution. A good 10 years or so later, while perusing a newsstand, I came across the cover of Newsweek magazine, which featured him seated in his wheelchair. In spite of being given only 2 years to live 10 years ago, The headline read, "Master of the Universe." This meant that he had become the most renowned physicist on the planet. Not only did he generate original ideas, but his train of thought was far from over, and if it seemed, but he no longer linked himself with his ideas. You can see why the forecasts were wrong, because you have to think that way. His survival was nothing short of miraculous. Then, the fact that someone of that character could have such an impact was a wonder. There was not a single complaining cell left in him. If his conceptual self had persisted, griping about the cosmos and himself, he would not have made it. The cosmos had had enough. One thing he stated in the interview stuck with me when I read it in that magazine. In the interview, he spoke about his life and said, "Who could wish for more?" He now uses a mechanical device to communicate. So, no matter what you're going through, when you say an unwavering yes to whatever comes up in you, incredible things begin to happen, for the simple reason that you perceive the foolishness and pointlessness of refusing to conform to reality to its fullest extent. So, the unwavering yes, even when it appears undesirable, comes next. The answer is yes. Footnote: over time, I received further letters from prisoners who read the book and grasped the concepts of surrender and inhabiting the body. This guy was the first of many who wrote to me from prison. I had one individual write to me shortly after the book was released and say, "I'm practicing the teaching, my life is transformed, and I'm teaching other prisoners. I have another 15 years to do here, and it's okay. My life is transformed." Last year he was released. He wasn't even parole eligible, so no one understands why. The specifics elude me, but he managed to escape. I don't care how it happened, but it was no longer a factor in his happiness. For that reason, it transpired. At this point, it was no longer crucial to his happiness. From here on out, his self-interest, greater than the world. Seek only the kingdom of heaven, which is within, which is now, here and now. Not there, here and now. This is something Jesus stated over and time again. I think Jesus actually stated, "Find the kingdom of heaven, and all the other things that you thought you needed will be added unto you." Things you thought you needed weren't really necessary. What was important was that you were yourself. Simply put, you believed they were necessary. We will include them. Thank you so much. At this point, it's irrelevant. I made it isn't something that happens anymore, even though you still enjoy it. Think, "Oh, this is nice." It won't be around for long though. There is no permanence. Therefore, perhaps the most important word to remember this afternoon is uncompromising. The unwavering yes, regardless of the circumstances. No one ever made a pact with life that read, "Okay, if you give me this and that, then I'll say yes." Put it down. Whatever comes my way, I will accept it. Right this second, right here. When a person's attitude changes from no to yes, that's surrender. The transition from internal resistance and denial to this very instant, to acceptance, openness, and yes at this very moment, is what we mean when we talk about surrender. You may find that you need to make this change multiple times, even within a single day, as you become more attuned to the non-surrendering, resistant state within yourself. Now that you're not completely identified with your thoughts, there's greater presence within you. Being more present allows you to notice states of no, which invariably lead to misery and pain, far more readily. So you see the negative and pick it up. Saying, "Oh, there is another no," brings with it the accompanying pain. Here we have it. The yes emerges on its own, after you see the pointlessness of the negative. Seeing the futility of rejecting what is, rather than trying to create it, is enough to find the yes. You're giving up there. After waiting a few minutes, you may receive another rejection or encounter another minor issue. This time, you recognize it and give in. The length of time you stay in a state of no depends on your level of presence and, to a lesser degree, the intensity of your physical discomfort. There is nothing you can do about that. There are two types of bodies, those with heavy pain and those with lighter discomfort. However, you can also use your pain body to be in the here and now while experiencing pain. What will you do if and when that time comes? Behold the anguish, the mental anguish. Yes, it has arrived. What are your options? For what comes up inside, the answer is yes. As soon as it happens, you feel pain. If you fail to notice it, the physical discomfort transforms into dissatisfied mental processes. Thus, we have a personalized version of me, a me that is unhappy, that takes on the weight of all the pain in the world and internalizes it as its own identity. Dealing with it is challenging. Both you and the people around you find it difficult to tolerate. You're an annoyance not only to yourself, but to everyone around you. You have one major issue. I don't mean any disrespect. You've already moved on from it. Yet here I was, in my perpetually miserable condition, a walking misery. The walking problem caused issues everywhere it went, and in the source itself, where it would come from, if it would come at all. Transforming a no into a yes is, thus, surrender. Finding the negative is sufficient. You move, and there it is. Yes. Fortunately, there is now something tremendous that some fortunate people can give up on in their lives. Few of you are really fortunate. A physical individual with a significant impairment, such as the one I just described, a wheelchair user, would be a big obstacle. From the moment you are born, there has been one major tragedy, one massive loss, something terribly wrong with your life. There is one heavy item, and the resistance is primarily concentrated on this one item. In such a situation, total capitulation may occur simultaneously, and the refusal to comply may never return. However, on a daily basis, the majority of you will encounter several small no's and other obstacles that need you to concede. There are a lot of minor annoyances and rejections of reality, and that's your practice. It's all right. It takes more time than if you had to deal with a single major issue, which may leave you miserable for years, or perhaps forever. Even if the change doesn't really take place, it's more likely to occur if presence isn't emerging within you. Take this choice to remain present. Therefore, remain aware of your own condition of non-surrender throughout your time here over the following several days. Okay, this moment is okay. Honestly, it's okay. So you re-enter the now. And then the transition happens automatically. You step out of the present moment and back into it. Methods for returning to the present moment do exist. Reawakening occurs all of a sudden. All of a sudden you might start paying close attention to your senses. For the last few minutes or hours, you may have been totally oblivious to your immediate environment. A sudden vigilance and sharpness have set in. Feelings, a perceptual field, or a connection to your core self are all possible. As soon as you go into the present moment, it happens. You might also be aware of the rhythm of your own breathing. Right now, if you want to feel your breath, you have to start living in the present. In any case, the condition of vigilant presence always makes a triumphant return. Alternatively, you might notice that you're staring at a sad reflection in the mirror and think, wow, I've been in a state of no acknowledge for the last 2 hours. Naturally, a part of you wants to keep saying, no, I feel compelled to keep going because of my tiny mentality, an energy field, a kind of energy. It has no interest in leaving. Your body is reluctant to leave the agony. It seeks continual agony. This is probably going to be the final thing I say to you this afternoon, but you might also notice something about yourself that is nearly addictive. In relation to misery, I use the term addicted. Some people's internal struggles are so great that they border on addiction. They just can't let go of their pain, and they contribute to the suffering of others. This approach is what Viktor Frankl calls intraction. Obviously, that has a lot to do with the pain body. The body's pain response is to seek out more agony, not less. In order to identify the no condition, one must be able to identify the so-called pleasure that comes from being unhappy. It's not pleasure at all, rather, it's suffering that the ego romanticizes as pleasure in order to fortify its sense of self. A miserable me is more powerful than a joyful me, said. In fact, the false self grows stronger and more contracted when it is sad. Sadness is a disease of the mind. This behavior has been around for a long time and is quite hard to break. Rather than beating yourself up or telling yourself, "I shouldn't be addicted," the trick is to just watch. When you realize that being unhappy isn't enjoyable, it's simply agony masquerading as pleasure, the ego's blunder becomes more apparent. Being aware of this is a life-altering event that contributes to the journey of human awareness. When you start to see these tendencies in yourself, it might even be funny. It is likely that your desire to develop as a person and to be present in the moment was the driving force behind your decision to view this video. This decision was made as a result of a more fundamental insight. It is for this reason that I strongly recommend that you subscribe to this channel so that you can continue your journey of self-discovery with the assistance of the new videos that we upload each day. As you increase your knowledge base and the number of things you understand, you will be more prepared to operate with the level of support that is reasonable and natural. Immediately after you have comprehended the seriousness of this caution, kindly answer by writing "Now."